Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Men of War 2. Today I wanted to talk about the last two news releases straight from the Men of War 2 developers. First up is a little bit of news about the single player content that's coming to the full game, as well as what you can expect to see in the next open beta that's available from May 11th to the 15th. We can get our hands on a mission from the American Falaise Pocket Story campaign, which the devs showcase and is actually in the background of this video. In it, your goal is to rescue an artillery unit which has presumably been surrounded or captured. Furthermore, there'll be two standalone missions that are not connected to any campaign, one from the Soviet perspective where you're playing as Soviet scouts and NKVD special forces. Here you have to rescue prisoners of war behind enemy lines while heavily outnumbered. The third mission sees you play as the Germans in Normandy in 1944, trying to stop Allied reinforcements from reaching the front line via an ambush. I want to mention here that you can actually already request access to the upcoming test via the Mode 2 store page, link below. However, if you already had access to the previous test, you should be automatically enrolled in this next one too. All of these missions will be available to also be played in co-op, though no max number of players has been announced at this time. I'm looking forward to playing these missions with Carly and getting some single player and co-op content out for you when I do get access. That is not all the news there is though. It really sounds like the developers are somewhat listening to the community feedback about the limited units in multiplayer games, which we'll talk about in just a second. But first of all, they've added two new maps, one of which takes place in North Africa. Now, assuming that infantry and vehicle skins will match the environment, and I honestly doubt that they'll do all of that work just for some multiplayer content, so hopefully there's also some North Africa-based missions to check out in the full game. The other map is set in the European Carpathian Mountains, and this brings the total number of maps to 7 for the upcoming test. This does make me wonder if we'll see Soviet desert skins, seeing as nothing is stopping someone from selecting the Soviets as a faction and then ending up on the new North Africa map. A trailer from late 2021 for Mode 2 does show that units and vehicles will have different camouflage sets, though I'm not sure if this will specifically apply to the Soviets being in a desert environment. Now, talking about the new multiplayer modes and types, I think a large number of players will be pretty happy to hear about this next one. A new mode called Combined Arms, which can be played up to 3v3, which will not limit players to use a specific battalion, and instead gives a much larger roster of units to call in during battle. Though it doesn't sound exactly like what we've seen in previous Men of War or Assault Squad or Gates of Hell games, it does seem to be a little bit more of a mix between the old system and the game's battalion system. They refer to it as your regiment, and you'll be able to customize it by picking from all units that are available to your nation. Furthermore, the population cap, which is the command point limit, has been raised from 30 to 50 per player. This does mean, however, that when you limit the players from 5v5 to 3v3, the total pop cap on a team will still be 150, either 5 times 30 for the 5v5 mode or 3 times 50 for the 3v3 mode. With a total of just 150 CP per team, this does seem still quite low, seeing as most of my Rob's Mod games back in Assault Squad 2, I definitely had about 120 to 180 CP per player, not per team. I'm of course happy to see that the developers are giving us a little bit of what we want, but I'd still love to see a game mode where we just aren't limited to either 30 or 50 CP. What is interesting though is that in the previous test you could only play the 5v5 frontline mode via the auto match system. Anything else you'd have to host via creating a lobby and having players specifically join your game. In this upcoming test, the 3v3 Combined Arms frontline mode will be the only mode available via the matchmaker, with the 5v5 frontline mode as well as the other modes only again available via the custom lobby system, which I assume is the developers messing around and seeing what people like better. It's definitely a step in the right direction, seeing the amount of CP per player almost double, but also almost having the max amount of players per battle, just meaning that in the end, battles will still be be fought with about 150 points per team. I wonder if there's like an engine limitation they aren't telling us about, but on a serious note, I personally have had a lot of fun with Mo 2, but sometimes you just want to have a massive battle with a ton of units. If they don't want that to be the main game mode, that's totally understandable and fine, but they definitely should allow players to have the option to have these large, multiple hundreds of CP battles. Another mode has also been announced called Line Defense, where 4 to 5 players defend 3 zones against AI enemies. Points are gained for controlling these zones. This mode sounds somewhat similar to the Incursion game mode, but this one is purely focused on PvE and is most likely not playable in PvP. So honestly, it's good to see that the developers are somewhat listening to the feedback from the community, but I'm hoping that they will include even more options for larger battles as seen in Men of War, Assault Squad 1 and 2, and Gates of Hell. If not, we just have to hope that modders will allow for these larger battles later on. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and I hope to catch you in the next one.